So we're at Quaama looking at the remnant native veg along the dry riverbanks where there was an intense fire on the 1st of January this year, and checking what the impact has been on the vegetation. And what we're finding is that it's a mixture of natives and weeds. As you'd expect in a river system that drains agricultural areas, there are a lot of weeds, particularly down close to the riverbed where the soil is moister. But there's plenty of natives and they do seem to be coming back fairly well, so the outcome shouldn't be too gruesome. So basically with the trees, you've got, I guess, 3 different possible responses to fire. With the eucalypts, they produce epicormic shoots, a lot of them. Epicormic meaning arising on the trunk, and in fact they also arise on the branches. So this tree over here is a ribbon gum, Eucalyptus viminalis, and this one's hanging out over the road, so it didn't have a whole lot of fuel on it. So its canopy has got scorched, but not really hot, and so it's resprouting a lot up in the canopy as well as producing epicormic shoots down low on the trunk. So that's the response that we've come to expect from eucalypts, so that's what most of them do post-fire. I should also say that they do this after drought as well. It's not totally a fire response. So during the millennium drought, we lost a lot of the foliage off trees on our place, and a lot of them put out epicormic shoots on the trunks subsequently. If the drought goes on too long, or if the fire is too intense, then it's possible the trees can't come back. Another example across the road here, which is an Angophora, which is leafing up really well. They tend to respond fairly quickly. So the casuarinas we've got on the riverbank here are river oak, Casuarina cunninghamiana. I've actually never seen them get burnt before, because normally a fire will go out when it hits the riverbank, but because this fire was so fast moving and intense, it's run through most of the rivers in the district that it encountered and scorched all the foliage on the casuarinas. Although actually there's one over here that's got a little bit of original foliage right up the top, and then on the middle branches it's sending out little epicormic shoots off the tops of the branches. The lower branches aren't doing that because they, well, not much anyway, because they cop the highest intensity fire. So it will be interesting to see whether these river oaks manage to recover just from resprouting or not. Okay, so just down here in front of the house on the other side of the river, there's a resprouting currajon with this really dense foliage about halfway up. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I would not have thought currajons were resprouters, but I've seen them doing it in several locations now, so clearly they can. So we've got one more resprouting eucalypt over here, which is a blue box, Eucalyptus boweriana, with the big blue-green, almost circular leaves. Interestingly, it's only doing it on the trunk and not up in the branches, so I guess that implies that the fire was pretty hot at that point. Then you've got a few eucalypts that don't resprout very well. And we've got those here as well. Eucalyptus elata, river peppermint, which grow in typically not very fire-prone habitats, such as riverbanks, and up in the snowies in the alpine zone, the snow gums. And they are only capable of resprouting from the base. So there's a big woody lignotuber, it's called, that grows at the bottom of almost all eucalypts, except for those that are totally incapable of resprouting. And when the top is killed, it produces lots of new shoots. So in a situation where you've had a succession of fires, you'll often find your river peppermints are multi-stemmed because they've done that process more than once. So the original trunk just becomes completely redundant, it never recovers, and you get a whole bunch of new trunks radiating out from the base of the original trunk, which eventually get to tree size. And you can actually tell it's river peppermint and not ribbon gum because it's quite rough to the touch, more so than the ribbon gum is. Plus the fact that if you look up, there's no resprouting going on up high. So this one that's resprouting from the base is a wattle, blackwood, Acacia melanoxylon. So blackwoods, in addition to resprouting from the base, they can also sucker off the roots. So if a blackwood gets killed, you might see a huge expanse of root suckers coming up all around it. And the same's true of a couple of other local wattles too. Hickory wattle and broadleaf hickory wattle also do that. And maiden's wattle, acacia maiden also forms great thickets of root suckers. Alright, so this one's a little eucalyptus maideni, maiden's blue gum, which you can tell from this very distinctive juvenile foliage. It was only quite a small plant, a couple of metres high, but it has managed to resprout off the base. So your bigger mature eucalypts can mostly resprout off the trunks, but with the young saplings they have to just resprout off the lignotuber, so they basically start again from scratch. And probably just one of these stems will come to dominate and the other will die back. It's unusual to get multi-stemmed regrowth from a plant this size getting killed by the fire. Okay, so there's actually some naturally occurring eucalyptus maideni on the other side of the creek here. I wouldn't have thought that was here because we looked at a planted one a moment ago, but there it is. They're obviously big enough that nobody's planted those. So that's good. Maideni is typically an occupant of the valley margins rather than right down in the valley proper. But being as how we're on a river, it's possible seeds has washed down from higher up in the distant past and that's got them established there. And there's some like the alpine ash and the mountain ash which just don't resprout at all. They have to come back from seed. And that strategy of coping with fire is called being an obligate seeder, because they're obliged to come back from seed. Locally, we've got an example of that, which is white ash, which grows up on top of Brown Mountain. So there's a nice stand of white ash around Piper's Lookout on top of Brown Mountain, and that is even aged, probably 1952, post-fire regrowth. So, yeah, a lot of the white ash stands in the district, such as the top of Mount Imlay and probably down at Pheasants Peak, I'm not sure, got burnt, and you know they'll be coming back from seed. In addition to resprouting, the eucalypts often throw up huge quantities of seedlings after a fire. Their woody fruits are up in the canopy, and as long as the fire isn't so intense that it consumes those fruits, then after the fire's passed through, they shed the seed onto this nice seed bed of ash and fluffy soil with no competition from any other plants temporarily. And yeah, they often proliferate hugely and you wind up with a really dense stand of saplings subsequently. So we've got a patch of little seedlings here, and these are going to be either elata or viminalis. They look very similar. And you can see, looking at these, the way they've come up in little depressions where moisture collects. So you often get that, or you find them growing in rows where they've come up in the lee of a log that gives them a bit of shelter from the elements, and also from browsing animals. This, I'd say, is a seedling, black wattle, Acacia mansii, and it's obviously put on a good amount of growth in the last 5 months or so. So wattles can be very fast growing because they start from quite a large seed relative to, say, a eucalypt. They've got a lot of stored food there to push them along in the early stages. Plus it's growing in nice, fertile, silty loam down here on the riverbank, which and it got some good rain soon after the fires, so it's put on a good spurt of growth.